This is the I Am the Wiz Film Reviews. I am the Wiz. You might notice I might be doing this a little bit different than usual. First off, I'm going to change a lot of what's going on with the podcast and the YouTube channel next year. But for today, I'm going to discuss my favorite first watches of 2024. Now, 2024, when it comes to my first watches, was a really good time for me. I watched 140 films. I got to see a lot of really good movies. I also watched all the movies from the James Bond series and the Star Trek series, which I was surprised how much fun I had doing that. I thought with this James Bond series, I was going to be like, oh my god, after 10 of them, I want this to be done. But me and Zero powered through all 25 of them in the first half of the year, and we had a great time doing it. And had some surprises along the way with that as well. So why don't I get into my top 10 first watches of 2024. Again, before I get started, leave a like on this video, subscribe if you want to listen to more, leave a comment if you have a comment on how shit my taste is, or if you like what I'm saying. You know, either way, I'd appreciate it. And I'm going to start off with number 10. I watched this film because of the theme that I had during the week that we had, which was films with Christian themes. And honestly, I wasn't expecting to like either of the films I chose in there, or to not like it as much as I did. But spoiler alert, both films are on this top 10 list. And the first one that I'm going to discuss is probably one of the funnier films I watched this year, and it's Monty Python's Life of Brian. I thought this film was utterly hilarious. And I was a fan of Holy Grail too. I thought that was a very funny movie, but I actually think this film is better than Holy Grail. I know. We don't have the Holy Hand Grenade of Antioch or all those other classic jokes in this, but I just think this was a funnier and much more thoughtful film as well. I gotta be honest, it is a film that makes fun of religion, and it does make fun of Christianity in a certain extent as well, but it really makes fun of the groupthinkness of those type of religions and how people treat them. And on top of that, it is just uproariously hilarious. I can think of one joke where I wasn't busting out laughing while watching the movie. But other than that, I think this was a fantastic movie. It's a movie that I definitely want to buy and want to have in my collection. Monty Python's Life of Brian, number 10. Number 9, Challengers. The thing about Challengers that was interesting is when I went to watch this film, I was expecting a sexcapade movie. The way that they marketed this movie was, you know, hot bodies, really attractive people, having sex with each other. That's kind of what I was expecting. And there's a little bit of that, but what it downplays is what is the best thing about this film, and it's a study on one-upping between lifelong competitors, not only in the sport that they play, but in their entire lives as well that they lead. All three leads were great in the film, but Zendaya was probably the best when it came to the three leads. She has a performance that is both electrifying and captivating. It honestly has the best character in the film as well, that really drives everything on. If you want an interesting film about competitors, but it's not about the sport they're competing in, I would say Challengers is one of the best films I've seen of that. A great film from this year. Check it out if you have not seen it. Number 8, When Harry Met Sally. I'm an admitted rom-com enjoyer. Okay, maybe not enjoyer is the right word. I'm an admitted rom-com lover. I love rom-coms. I'm a strange guy like that. I seem to like romance films quite a bit. And it surprised a lot of people that I haven't seen this film yet, because a lot of people have told me this is one of the best films. And the honest truth is, I never liked Meg Ryan. I didn't think she was all that great. So I kind of put it in the back burner. But man, I am glad I watched this film, because this film is not only funny, but the romance is believable in this film as well. Both Billy Crystal and Meg Ryan are great in this film, but the best thing about this film is the script. The way that Nora Ephron writes both the characters and the romance is so intelligently and hilariously done. So number 8, When Harry Met Sally. Now, before I get to number 7, let's go into some of my honorable mentions. These are some films that I watched this year that didn't quite make the cut, but I do want to talk about. There were some that were pretty interesting that both me, Zero, and Kim at one point watched that I do want to give a shout out to. And the first one I want to talk about is When the Wind Blows. This was a very thoughtful but very harrowing film that was an animated film about an elderly couple who try to survive a nuclear bomb going off and the fallout after that. Just a depressing and very emotionally harrowing film to watch. It is a rough film to watch at times, but it's also deeply powerful, and it's something that if you don't mind the heavy subject matter, that I think you should check out. Another honorable mention I want to talk about is Edward Scissorhands. Me and Zero just reviewed this recently, and this film is not only a visually striking film, but it tells a very deep story that I was not expecting. I was expecting, some weirdness and a little bit of romance, but that's not really what this film is. There is some of that, of course, but the story is one of acceptance and otherism that I thought was actually very poignant and very surprising when watching this. So Edward Scissorhands is also an honorable mention. And there's one other honorable mention I want to discuss before I move on, and that is The Holdovers. That's Alexander Payne's last movie from last year that got him a bunch of Oscar nominations, as well as Paul Giamatti, the star of that film. I think the performances from the leads were really good, but of course, Paul Giamatti is the best thing about this film, but playing a cranky boarding school teacher that I thought was really funny, but also very sad in his way. But definitely a film that I really enjoyed, and I was very happy to have watched. All right, so we got back to the honorable mentions. Let's go into the list again. Number 7, Suzume by Makoto Shinkai. I gotta tell you, Suzume is the one film that I think surprised me the most this year, because I was kind of expecting a very pretty movie that is goofy and is kind of an adventure, so I was just ready to have a good time and just enjoy the film. And for the first half of the film, that's what Suzume is. But the second half belies a surprising heart and emotion that I was really not expecting, and it hit hard for me. Not only does it have gorgeous visuals, and it has a very fun and heartfelt story, but it's a very heartfelt story about grief and moving forward after a loss that I wasn't really expecting in this movie. I gotta say this, if Shinkai can make another film like this, he is undoubtedly the next Miyazaki when it comes to Japanese filmmakers. So, number 7, Suzume. Number 6, the David Lynch film that isn't so weird, but kind of, The Straight Story. I've been wanting to watch Straight Story for a long time, but could never find a way to watch it. That is until somebody on X told me, yo, it's on Disney+. And I was like, Disney+? What's it doing on Disney+? And I didn't realize that Disney was the one that financed it, so that shows what I know. But as soon as I found out, I had to schedule a watch for this immediately. And I did, and I'm glad I did, because this might be David Lynch's second best and least weird film. This film is about an old stubborn man who drives to see his brother who is dying on his tractor because he cannot drive. And it sounds really silly, and on the face of it kind of is. But there is a heart to this film that is deeply touching and sweet. And it's buoyed by the performance of Richard Farnsworth, who has this sensitivity and warmth to this old character that helps you really want to get behind him. And on top of that, Lynch's direction when it comes to portraying people and the land that the old man is going on was another thing that was just beautiful to watch. So, number 6, one of my favorite films of the year, The Straight Story. Number 5, we're getting to the top 5 now. Number 5, The Handmaiden, directed by Park Chan-wook. Well, how about that sound design, eh? But, okay, aside from the sound design, there is a lot about The Handmaiden that is really good. We can get into the liberating story, the beautiful visuals, the great performances, the moving romance and plotline. But this is a very deep story about a woman being kept. The person is trying to set her free, and the plot to make it all work is never boring and is always fascinating. For a film, I think it's an outstanding achievement to not only be as beautiful as it is, but to take all those elements and make that type of film work so well. Number 5, The Handmaiden. Excellent movie. Number 4, the Hitchcock classic Rear Window. My God, number 4 is Rear Window. Isn't this considered one of the best films ever made? Yes, it is, and I agree with that. This was a really good movie. One of the things that this film did that I was amazed by was make the building, make the location a full character. And that's what makes this film incredibly interesting to watch, because it's only set in one place, and that is the room of the lead character. But the location is so interesting and vibrant that it actually helps the plot along when all he's doing is looking around and finding out what's going on. This is a story about a possible murder or the possible mental deterioration of its main character, and it spins a yarn that is really just a lot of fun to watch. It's very engaging and is very entertaining from frame one. It's got great performances by Grace Kelly and James Stewart. It is a classic. We all know it, and honestly, I was glad to see it for the first time and to see it for myself. All right, so before we get to my top 3, let's get into 2 more honorable mentions that I want to talk about. When I saw this film this year, I thought this was going to be a top 10er for sure. But because I saw a lot of great films, it kind of fell by the wayside. But I think this is still a film that if you have not seen it, you really should. It's got one of the best casts I've ever seen. And it's a film that uses very little to make a lot work. And that is Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. This has Elizabeth Taylor's best performance that I have seen. And it's got this funny and uncomfortable story that I thought was really thought-provoking. So Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, an honorable mention. And my final honorable mention is the one movie that I would consider my number 11 when it comes to this list, and that is Akira Kurosawa's The Bad Sleep Well. This is basically Kurosawa's Hamlet. It's about a guy who went up the corporate ladder to strike revenge on the people who killed his father, or who he believed killed his father. It is a really good film. It's very entertaining, but it also has this emotional heft to it. When the main character starts to feel guilt for what he is doing, what he's doing is not only hurting the people that wronged him, but it's also hurting people that he actually cares about. And it's that and the performance of Toshiro Mifune that really make this film incredibly engaging and entertaining. If you have not seen it, it is on the Criterion channel. Check that out. And I want a 4K or Blu-ray of this Criterion. Please make that work. Alright, so we are at the top 3 first watches of this year. Number 3, when I mentioned at the top that I was doing Christian themes in 1 week of the year last year, I was not expecting both movies to end up in my top 10, but that's exactly what happened. Number 10 was, of course, Monty Python's Life of Brian, which more of making fun of the religion. But number 3 was something that I was not expecting to love as much, and it's become one of my favorite films from this director, and that is The Last Temptation of Christ by Martin Scorsese. Again, I am stunned that this is considered a controversial movie, because I think this is probably one of the best portrayals of Jesus I've seen. But then again, I'm not exactly religious, that might be why. The film does the most controversial thing that you could do with Jesus, apparently, and that is portray him as human. But honestly, I think it's a very deeply moving story about a man who's trying to better his people and himself. And I think Willem Dafoe gives a great performance, but also it's got incredible direction. I think the way the film looks great, and it's got a really good soundtrack, something I really was not expecting. So number 3, if you haven't seen it, I really would recommend you see The Last Temptation of Christ. Number 2, 5 Easy Pieces, directed by Bob Rafelson. I think film lovers, I think people who really love film, possess a good amount of empathy, warmth, and willingness to believe. Honestly, that's how I feel. If you love films, I think you would have those things in common. 5 Easy Pieces tells the story of someone who has been given all the empathy and support that he could possibly get, along with the talent and intellect to show that he's worth that talent. And yet, Jack Nicholson's character rejects all of it. Instead of becoming that brilliant prodigy that he's meant to be, he decides to just live a meaningless, lazy kind of life, and he rejects the people who love him all along the way. But here's the thing about this film. You would think this is a film that condemns, judges, or admonishes this person for being this way, but it doesn't. It shows it plain as day who he is and what he becomes. And that decision specifically is what makes this movie so profoundly moving, yet incredibly sad, because it shows this character, and with an incredible performance by Jack Nicholson, it shows that as messed up as he is, there is some redeeming quality to him. It's just that he needs to find it himself. It is a profoundly moving and emotionally exasperating film. It's a film that, again, when I saw it, I was sure this was going to be my number 1. But it is my number 2, 5 Easy Pieces. But what is my number 1? I gotta tell you, number 1, The Tree of Life, directed by Terrence Malick. How do you know that you have watched an amazing film? You know by saying to yourself after you're done, why didn't I see this sooner? And I'm going to tell you why I didn't see this sooner. Everything I've heard about this film from people has been either it is amazing, or it is a pretentious piece of shit. Those are the 2 things I've heard. I've never heard anything in between. There's probably people who have said in between. But those are 2 things I've heard. With that, and it being about 3 hours long, I kind of push it to a side for about a decade plus, thinking I'll get around to it. Man, I wish I did this sooner. Whiz. The Tree of Life, pure and simple, is a director's film. Now, I know some of you are going to be saying, all films are director's films. The director is what makes the film work. Yeah, I agree with you saying, but this is particularly a vision of a specific director. I don't think anybody could make this film but Terrence Malick, because Terrence Malick put more into this film than I think most directors will ever put in this film. It is his primal vision. It is undoubtedly his vision. It is gorgeous, it is moving, it is a meditation of life, the past, and finding a way to move forward with the mistakes of your parents and your loved ones. It is an unforgettable movie. It is gorgeous in a way, and honestly, it is a film that I will never forget. It will quickly become one of my favorite films of all time. It is gorgeous in any sort of way. Do I understand why people don't like this? Yes, I do. You are going to know within 30 minutes if you're going to dig this movie. And man, did I get into this movie hook, line, and sinker. So, my number 1 first watch of the year, Terrence Malick's The Tree of Life. If you have not seen it, I would honestly say give it a shot. Alright, so let's get back down to the list here. Number 10, Monty Python's Life of Brian. Number 9, Challengers. Number 8, When Harry Met Sally. Number 7, Suzume. Number 6, The Straight Story. Number 5, The Handmaiden. Number 4, Rear Window. Number 3, The Last Temptation of Christ. Number 2, 5 Easy Pieces. And number 1, The Tree of Life. All amazing movies. There's other movies that I have watched that are not on my honorable mentions list. I do have a full write-up of my thoughts and feelings of this year at my website, IamTheWiz.com. It will be the top story when you go on there. You're going to see all my honorable mentions and the top 10 list and my thoughts, along with the reviews that are on there as well. I just want to say right off the bat, thank you again for listening. Thank you again for watching this on YouTube. We went from 100 subscribers last year to about 630 this year, and I am excited to see what's going forward. I'm going to change more things up on the YouTube channel. I'm going to concentrate more on YouTube from now on. I might still do something on the podcast side moving forward, but I'm going to concentrate more on YouTube as we move forward. So again, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I hope to hear from you guys in 2025.